Yeah, yeah. And the sad reality is a lot of those 18 to 24-year-olds were also fathers. So they were leaving families behind, and some of them had multiple children. Let's be honest about it. And the long-term effect of them being taken away or snatched away for long periods of time. And then you also found that oftentimes the children followed in the footsteps. And so they like to see a tremendous, vicious cycle, if you will, of a revolving door. They go in, they go out. The recidivism rate, I understand, was real high at one time, and things like that. So from you're a setting judge, and you have, I guess, a lot of course, you have, guidelines and things that you have to follow. But you have what do you call it, latitude, I guess, also. Do you find the system as unfair? And I know this may not be a fair question to you, as unfair to Black and brown communities as it appears to be, when it comes down to sentencing and some other things. And for example, right now, of course, the big case is the police officer who shot the man sitting in his own apartment, eating ice cream on his couch. And she did get convicted of murder, which shocked me. But they only gave her 10 years, and a lot of people jumping up and down about that. And then they say she can be eligible for parole in 5 years. Contrast that with the young lady who I believe was in Florida, who had a PFA against her husband, who was on record of having beaten her many times. He breaks into her house. She shoots 2 warning shots in the ceiling, and she gets 20 years for discharging a firearm. That just seems to be so crazy.
Well, let me say this.
Okay.
I won't comment on any individual judge's sentence or any particular sentence anyone received.
Okay.
But justice is like anything else. There's a human person behind every sentence.
There you go. Yeah.
And that's on both sides, the judge and the person who's in front of the judge. And I think what happens is that we forget that component is there. And so are there judges who have a tendency to not be fair in how they deal with different racial groups or ethnic groups? Certainly, because we know that in human nature.
That's right.
But we don't have that in Dauphin County. But I think that exists.
Okay.
I think everywhere, and I think most judges try to be thoughtful about the sentences that they're imposing.
Okay.
Most judges try to look at the person that's in front of them. But you're filtering that through your own lens.
Yeah. Yes.
So it all depends on what your lens is.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yes.
So but I do think every judge tries to be conscientious. I shouldn't say every judge, but the majority of judges that I know, try to be conscientious about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And race does play a role.
Oh,
and
my
for
goodness.
us to say that we're blind to it or we're colorblind is to disregard the realities of who we are. So we don't live in a colorblind society. That that's a fallacy. So it is a factor that you should always consider. When you are a judge, you should consider: am I looking at this through the proper lens?
I like it.
Am I filtering out my own bias, my own prejudice, the things that I hold personally that may not reflect fairly on how I deal with this individual? And if you've done that, checked yourself on those issues, then you should be able to give a fair and just decision, verdict, sentence, whatever the case may be.
I like that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll let Dr. Miller back in here. Dr. Miller, I'm sure you have some thoughts or a question for Judge Morris.
Dr. Miller? Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay. I was just enjoying the really positive perspective and all the I should say progress on a lot of levels, but also the judge's perspective in working with the youth. And I think that the more that there is a focus in the way that he explained, and really like the intention of most judges having a similar intention when they're listening to the case and really wanting to help the youth, to not become one of the statistics and continuing to be a repeated offender, and knowing that having an opportunity to turn the leaf over earlier has a much better outcome than if they're repeatedly going back to prison, and there's this badge of I guess masculinity, or all the different justifications of, oh yeah, I went to prison, I made it, and some people even saying, yeah, it was easier in prison than it's out on the street. So really being able to help these young people when they are starting to get into the system, that is not the way for them to get whatever type of I guess feeling like a man, or feeling like they're handling something because they can get through prison. But there's another way to do that, and for them to know that they really can make a change. They don't have to have it as a life career of going back and forth in and out of prison.
Yeah. So, Dr. Miller, from a therapist standpoint, what do you think is, one or two of the leading causes for juveniles constantly being, caught up in the system? There's a group that seems to avoid it, and they do well, where they go to school, go to college, do all the, so-called right stuff. And then there's that group that just seems to perpetually be involved in the system. What do you think are the causes for young persons today who are being caught up in the system the way that they are?
Well, I don't think there's an easy answer to that, but there are some things that do kind of stand out. Sometimes when the model, particularly for young men or even young women, has been where the parent has been in jail repeatedly, that in some ways kind of, how can I put it? Their parent went in that situation, so they don't necessarily view it as something out of the ordinary, or and depending on their parents' perspective about being in jail, that also forms their views of going to prison, and whether there's an opportunity to choose a different way of life. And just general role models, even if it's not a parent, if there's someone that they're able to connect with who had been in prison, and to actually say, yeah, I've been there, I've done that, and I realized that there were other options, and this is how I did it. And even
knocked off. So
Sure.
she need to reboot?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so while she's doing that, and I'll let you communicate with her, I'm gonna go back to Judge Morris.
Sure.
So Judge Morris, and I know you heard some of what she was saying. When you think about some of the root causes and things that are coming in front of your bench, what should we be concerned about as far as our juveniles are concerned right now? What's driving them to be in front of you at this hour, at this time?
Well, having practiced as a practicing lawyer for 25 years in this town, and doing most of that as a criminal defense attorney, a lot of the young people I'm seeing are second generation of folks. And so I kind of know the history of the parents.
Yeah.
At least one of the parents. And so, there is that, sort of self-fulfilling prophecy type thing that goes on there, where my father was this, so I'm going to be this. And I think we sort of have to press in on that, and we have to, find a way to bridge the gap for some of these folks who have started to create a cycle. But cycles can be broken.
That's right.
And I think it's with proper education, with compassion and understanding. You can't take something that has been wounded and damaged and expect to fix it overnight.
That's right.
It's a process. So some of the community-based things that go on here in Harrisburg, I think are positive ways to do it. You have a lot of people who are extremely active in the community. On occasion, I have had to reach out to some folks in the community when I see a young person who I think that they can get to.
Yeah.
And we can do that off the books, so to speak. I've tried to do that because these are lives. These are precious lives.
That's right.
And you know, they didn't choose which family to be born in.
Yeah.
But God chose them to be on this earth, so it's our obligation to try to make sure that their time on this earth is valuable and appreciated and respected, and that we give them an opportunity to learn, grow, and mature. So, you know, I think, you know, we can break some of those things, but it's a process. It's a learning process. Some kids don't know about just the basic things that they need to know to be able to conduct themselves properly in society because they didn't learn it. And so some of that takes a little extra effort to teach and be patient and understand that these are children.
Absolutely.
They are making mistakes. Some of those mistakes can be tragic and fatal, but it's still a child.
Still a child.
And we owe it to them to do our best to try to help them through the processes that they're going through, and sometimes that takes some extra effort from outside of the family. Which is where the community comes in.
Yeah. So I see Dr. Miller's back. Dr. Miller, you back on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good.
What was the last thing that you heard me say?
Ooh, I'm gonna test. You're not mobile now. Come on. All I know is you were making some really good points about, you know, young people in terms of. Okay, I can't say the last thing you said. Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to put the judge on on the spot and ask him if you remember the last thing I said.
Let me ask you this then. Respond to this, if you will, because Judge Morris has really supported Life Esteem and many other programs in the area here by, referring families to us and making sure that they had the opportunity to come to parenting groups and stuff like that. And we believe that once we get, them in the group, we can help them, develop and grow and that kind of stuff. But we know it's a challenge, though, because they don't all want to come and they don't always listen. But have you been, able to work with judges or other, let's say the court, the juvenile justice system out in your way to work with families or individuals who certainly needed your help, but they were referred by way of the courts? Have you had that opportunity yet?
Yes, I have worked with mandated clients so that they, on the request, put that, of the legal system for them to be in counseling and therapy, receiving services as part of whether it's their parole or whatever type of service that's put in place for them to hopefully be rehabilitated. And kind of tying into what I was sharing before, and I think there was some mention of this in between me trying to log back in, as far as parents, what their experiences are, if they had been in the system or they had been to jail, how the child perceives it may be different than if the parent had not been. And in some cases, even when the parent is trying to say, well, that's not the way to go, I've been there, I've done that. Sometimes the child is like, well, what can you tell me? You're doing the same thing, or you have done the same thing, So, it really depends on the relationship that the child has with the parent. And of course, what the parent's intentions are, if they're really trying to turn over a new leaf. But it's not just the parents. I think I had heard Judge Morris mentioned about the community. So there are people who are in the community who have been incarcerated, and they're working really hard to get to the young people. To let them know that they don't have to keep going back. And I think I had I'm not sure if you heard me, but I had mentioned that some youth, once they get in the system, they feel that that is the only option for them. And, you know, when it comes to getting a job, employers don't want to hire you if you have a felony. And, you know, going back and forth with that, but they can become entrepreneurs. They can start their own business. They don't necessarily have to be further bound by a mistake that they made. There are so many options. And so those who are giving back to the community and reaching out to the young people can sometimes really help even parents in their role of trying to get their child back on the right path as well. So really the community coming together.
No question about it. Community is huge in this, I would imagine. Now, Judge Morris, I know you also deal with adoptions and other things. Tell us a little bit more about your office and all that you do within the scope of your, your bench.
Well, I am the juvenile judge, so I do most of the juvenile work. I'm backed up by Judge Edward Barsico in the juvenile area. I also do adoptions, termination of parental rights, guardianships, which is another area where, you know, some of our most vulnerable citizens are affected. We also do civil and criminal trials. We're on a trial rotation, so occasionally I do those things. So we have a fairly active caseload, and give me an opportunity to see a lot of our citizens, sometimes not in their best circumstances. We also do protection from abuse hearings. Judge Marsico and I share that duty. We rotate that. So a lot of our citizens get to see me behind the bench, and they're not always in the best circumstances. But one of the things we endeavor to do is to give people their due process, to hear them out, to listen, and to try to allow every side to be heard. And I think when you do that, people respond, even if you don't rule in their favor. They respond favorably to having an opportunity to be heard. So that's what we endeavor to do. But we do that in a lot of different areas.
Okay. And so one of the things that when I think back to Dauphin County judges, I'm thinking of Clarence Morrison.
Yes.
And you. Was there others?
African American?
African American.
Yeah. No, we're the only two.
The only two.
Yeah.
So you know, in a sense, you made history again for us. That's
he made history. He was a trailblazer.
He was a trailblazer, yeah, but it took somebody to follow up. You know, you can't just have that one out there. So again, it makes. But let's talk about that though. Does it really make a difference? We always say, man, we need someone, you know, that looks like us, that understands our perspective, that has our lens a little bit. So tell us how that works, you know.
Well, I would be a hypocrite if I said it didn't make a difference.
Okay.
Because I have counseled many folks in the community that, you know, that they need to get in the room. You know, they say, I don't want to deal with these white folks. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I'm like, look, you need to be in the room. Your voice is important. And unless you're in the room, you know, you can't change the dialogue.
That's right.
You can't affect it. And so, you know, I'm brutally honest about that. You know, it's important that we're in these spaces. Some of these spaces that we might not necessarily feel comfortable being in all the time, but these spaces are important for us to be in because you can change perspectives and you can change the dialogue. And when people hear, then eventually they may be willing to listen. And then they may be willing to change.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think it is very important.
Good.
You know, and that's one of the factors that I weighed when I decided to run.
Okay. Yeah. You know, one of the things that we've noticed about juvenile involvement in the system, two things. One, you mentioned Dr. Miller, you mentioned Rafika Muhammad, and I remember her bringing to the table the disproportionate minority contact in terms of, you know, being African-American people and people of color being involved in the system at a disproportionate, you know, way than others. But also we noticed that there's been a lot of what they call relational aggression on the part of young ladies being involved in the system. Judge, from you know, where you sit, do you see more young women coming into the system and, you know, being placed in care, if you will, of the system than before, or is that kind of decreasing as well?
No, that's increasing. That's the one area where we are seeing an increase. Our young ladies are crying out. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Because the amount of crime that they're getting involved in and the escalation, the types of crimes that they're getting involved in are getting more and more serious. And so those numbers are increasing. Their male counterparts still outnumber them in terms of cases.
Sure.
But the percentages are changing, and we're getting a higher percentage of young ladies who are getting into trouble and getting in the system.
Yeah.
So that is an area that I think the women in our community need to be attuned to. Not the men can't ignore it,
right.
But I think the women in our community need to be in tune to that and try to find ways to keep the young ladies focused on, moving in a positive direction with their lives.
Absolutely. And Dr. Miller, well, first I'm going to turn to Brother Chris. Brother Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing very, very well here. I'm enjoying this engaging conversation you're having with Judge Morris, and also our special co-host, Reverend Dr. Myra Miller. Go ahead, sir.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you see if questions are coming up, and if you could maybe feed us any of that, that would be fine too, Brother Chris. And this is Chris Thomas, by the way, who is the owner and founder of the Voice17104.com. He's the pastor of
Consuming Fire Harrisburg, sir.
All right. Go ahead, Brother Chris. And him and his lovely wife, Melissa, they do a great job. And so, again, thank you for creating this vehicle. Dr. Miller, we talked about women in the system. These young ladies are entering in a greater numbers, as Judge Morris just told us. And do you have any perspective or any thoughts on why that might be? What are young ladies doing now that maybe they didn't do so much before? So what's driving them into the court system, especially at a very young age? Are you able to speak to any factors that might come to your mind?
Well, I don't know how much this is a factor, but it seems like there's, for lack of a better term, gang related for the women now. It's kind of started off more with the young men, but it seems like the women, the young women now are, I don't know if they would necessarily call it a gang. But they're engaging in behaviors that would be considered that, and everything from theft, shoplifting, to literally assault. And so there's different levels of it. I mean, I know at one point, I know someone who literally stole someone's checkbook, and they had decided that they were going to share it with their friends. And so, here was these blank checks, and they were in college at this time. And I think for that particular young lady, she really dodged a bullet because she had a very compassionate judge that allowed her, because she was already in college, for her to turn over a new leaf, because she hadn't had any previous incidents as far as with run-ins with the law. But when this first one, I mean, literally, she might not have had any previous experience, but she went straight out with a felony, like as her first offense, so that was really significant. And her background, she came from a middle class family, and all these things. So that was the last thing you would have expected, for her to take somebody's checkbook and then, share it with her friends. But, kind of looking at this, I guess in some ways, and I really would have to defer to Judge Morris to really talk about what type of crimes these young women are getting into. But that is one particular situation that I'm aware of. So Judge Morris, I would love to hear your experience as far as what type of crimes that you're seeing that the young women are being involved in.
It's almost every kind of crime you can imagine. I mean, I think a lot of some of our criminal activity now amongst juveniles is driven by the internet, Facebook, Twitter, whatever else they use. A lot of that, fights are organized around that. Guns are displayed through those mediums, which lead to, violent altercations. But the girls are involved along with the boys in some of these situations. And I like the point you made about the gang activity, because that's a very good point. And it's not just a West Coast thing. I think it is prevalent here too. And young ladies congregate just like young men. And if there's a particular girl who's on the outs, or a particular group of girls who are on the outs, then they sometimes it leads to violence amongst them. We have theft-related offenses because of the status things that are going out in the community, and the things that they feel that they have to maintain a certain status. So you have a lot of those types of crimes as well, and crimes related to boyfriend, girlfriend disputes, and this guy's with this girl, and supposed to be with this girl, and the next thing you know, there's an incident there. But they're getting more and more serious in nature. So you have groups of girls jumping on other girls, and fights like that you didn't used to see years ago. So it's it's an alarming trend, but I think it's driven a lot by what they see in the media, and the way they see some other ladies conduct themselves who are supposedly at a different level. So I think it's driven by some of that, but we're seeing all kinds of criminal activity.
So let me ask you a question, Judge Morris. When we think about a lot of juveniles have been sentenced and tried as adults. What, okay, you think of murder or something like that, we get it. But judges have, I guess, again, latitude in order to make that decision as to whether or not they would be tried as an adult or as a juvenile. Why the uptick? Is there uptick? Now, I'm thinking there's uptick. Maybe there's not, in terms of the numbers.
Well, I'd say that there probably is not an uptick. I'd say that over the past several years, at least when I took the bench, one of the things we talked about was making sure we did a process that allowed those juveniles who were charged as adults to get in court quickly, so that there wasn't long delays where they sat in jail and waited to have an opportunity to have their case either transferred back to juvenile court or resolved in the adult court system. And just today, I had a child who was originally charged as a juvenile, and they attempted to transfer his case to adult court. And because we have this process where we try to move those cases more quickly, the case was resolved in a timely manner. We had juveniles sitting a year in jail before their lawyer actually got them to court to say this case should be sent back to juvenile court. So we now set up a procedure where once a month we review those cases, so that we're assured that the kids who are in an adult prison awaiting their case, either to be put back into juvenile court or to have their case just resolved in adult court, we make sure those kids don't get lost in the system, and we get them processed as quickly as possible. I mean, it's one thing for an adult offender to sit on bail waiting for his case to come to court. That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be a long period of time. We want justice to be, handed out swiftly, and we want people to have their day in court. But for a juvenile to be sitting in an adult prison awaiting the disposition of their case, our legislature designed it so that wouldn't happen. There's a procedure. We weren't using that procedure. We're now using that procedure. So every month we see these kids, and we have an opportunity to make sure that their case gets moved through the system more swiftly.
Fantastic. Great. So, in light of that, if there was something, just from your observation, having been, on the bench now for a while, if you were going to change or modify something the way the system currently works on behalf of juveniles, what might that be? Is there something that you would say, maybe we need to look at this in terms of the long-term effects it has on the juvenile and his family, and even the future of the juvenile once they're involved here? Because sometimes laws mean well, regulations mean well, but they have a different effect than what we thought they would have. So I don't know if that's, too broad of a question, or if there's something that, you could glean out of that. But people who don't know the system, we often have this, view of the system being extremely unfair or whatever. And it's not necessarily, but that's just because we don't understand it. But then we see something in action and we're thinking, well, why would you? And, and people say, yeah, why would you do that? Not like that. So I don't know. Is there something that, you would change?
Well, I mean, I could propose a ton of changes.
I hear you.
To the system. but I would just say that, we have probably the best system that you could have in the world.
Okay.
And sometimes we take it for granted.
We do.
Whenever I do jury duty, I give a citizenship quiz.
Okay.
Sort of while the jurors are sitting there waiting to be picked. And it is the new citizen, the folks who have just been naturalized, who ace that citizenship exam, and they take it seriously, and they take their oath when they become jurors very seriously, because they value this system that we have.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the folks that are in the system, whenever I hear an African American or a person of color of any racial or ethnic background who says, I don't want to go to jury duty, I'm trying to avoid jury duty, then I say to myself,
yeah.
And you say the system is unfair.
There you go.
Say that.
Yep.
Or when they avoid court. Well, I'm not going to testify. I don't want to be involved in that process.
Yeah.
You're making the system less reliable. Because if you have information that could help someone in a case, and you don't come forward because of some community pressure, then you make the system less fair.
That's a good point.
So, I think as a community, we have to get more involved in the system. When I was in undergraduate school at Temple University, they had a big police corruption trial in Philadelphia.
I remember.
And so I sat in court when I wasn't in class for several days to watch it, to be a citizen, just to see what was going on there. And I think we don't have enough civic engagement on that level so that folks get to know what's going on in the system. It wouldn't even cross someone's mind to go sit in a courtroom because it's public and it's open and anybody can go down there and anybody can sit in on a case. Most people don't even think about that.
That's true.
And so they're detached from the system. So the tendency is to blame the system for everything because they haven't seen it in operation.
Good point. Very good point. Now, you also mentioned that you do adoptions and foster care, this kind of thing. Let's talk about fathers for a minute, because a lot of fathers think they'd get jobbed. They go into the, and then immediately the court takes the mother's side and not the father's side. But that's changing a lot too. I mean, is that correct? Because now there's isn't it what they call the bench card or something like that, where the father's rights have to be considered and be involved and all that, stuff.
Let me say, I think the father's rights have always been considered.
Okay.
We have factors that we have to weigh when we consider them. Not everybody considers them the same. Okay. There may have been a paternalistic system at one point because society sort of drives some of these things, trends in society. And I wasn't there then, and I don't know whether that was the case or not. But a lot of men have that perception that there was sort of, this tendency for judges to take the woman's side and sort of be the role of that super father and say, I'm going to make you be responsible. But I don't see that now. And when you come to court and things don't go your way, there's a tendency to blame the system. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes it's justified. But most times I believe that it's just a lack of understanding. Okay. Let's talk about child support, for example. There's a chart. It says that if you make this amount of money,
that's right.
If the woman makes this amount of money and the husband makes this amount, or the father makes this amount of money, then I take those two numbers, I put them together, I come up with a calculation, and that's what you owe. I mean, the legislature came up with the charts, and the system designed it itself so that it would try to be fair and use those numbers. And you have bills, and you know this and you know that. Well, the other person has bills, and they got this and they got that going on. So the fairest way is to take a look at the numbers.
That's right.
And split them down the middle and say, this is what your number is. And a lot of people don't like that or appreciate that because it creates financial strain. But that's the way it's done. So, not understanding that, you may feel like you're being done a disservice or an injustice. But if you step into the system, try to take these opportunities to learn about the system, then you become less threatened by it. I'll put it that way.
And I agree with that. And actually, there are some mechanisms in place where people can become more educated about how the system works. I don't know if it's all around the country, but I know here in Dauphin County, I've experienced that. Even the police have set up some academies where citizens can come in and learn more about what is policing, stuff like that. So it's all good stuff. Dr. Miller, you still there?
Yes, I am. I actually had a question for the judge. Is that okay?
Yeah, but please, yes.
Well, Judge Morris, I was just thinking, we're talking about the young people who are in the system. What about whether they have previously had an experience in the system or not? What would you recommend for young people as, they're considering their careers? There are some young people who are interested in becoming lawyers, who want to get involved as a paralegal, or hopefully aspire to do what you've done to become a judge. What words of encouragement would you have for the young people so that they can be advocates for, their peers, and, just in the community? And if they would like to make a career of it, what would you suggest?
Well, that's a good question. I love what I do, and I love what I've done in the past. I love being a lawyer. I love practicing law. I love being a judge now. And the one thing that I would encourage anyone who's interested in a career in the law to do is to, really apply themselves at whatever it is they're doing. Because in undergraduate school, you can do whatever you want to do, and you can still go to law school. And so, find whatever that thing is that sparks your interest, and study that first, and then, decide whether or not the law is right for you. I think young people entering career paths and making decisions about their career should take their time and find out what's right for them. Now, as an African American, in this profession, there are fewer and fewer of folks that look like me in this profession. So, I love to have some company. So I would encourage, our Black and Brown community to consider these types of careers, because as I said before, if you can get in the room, you can change the dynamic. And so, one of the things that I try to do is I try to mentor young lawyers who look like me, not because I'm, excluding lawyers who don't look like me, but because I know the roads that I had to travel. I know what it feels like to be sitting in a courtroom with your briefcase open next to your client and have the judge say, "Do you have a lawyer?" And me have to tell my white client, "Don't say anything. I'm your lawyer. I'll speak for you." And I begin speaking, and the judge asks them again, "Do you have a lawyer?" That type of thing. You can't experience that unless you're in my frame. And so, when I tour these young African American lawyers, I try to be real with them about, the environment that they may face, but how you can overcome that, and how you can still get justice in this system, even if you think that the cards are stacked against you. So, I encourage anybody who's thinking about a career in law, and this is irrespective of race, to understand why they're doing it, what their passion and drive is for it, and if it's something other than justice, If it's something other than to love the law and live out the law and make sure that justice is upheld, then it's probably not for you. If you're getting into it for money, and I want to make a lot of money and be a rich lawyer, and there'll be lawyers that'll be very rich, but they have a passion for what they do.
All right.
And so, I'd encourage anybody interested in this career to learn as much about it as they can and pursue it because it's something they want to do.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Are you still okay? I don't know if you're going to ask another part of the question, Dr. Miller.
No, thank you, Judge Morris. That was exactly what I wanted to hear, and hopefully anyone who's listening who is interested themselves or have young people, that they will be able to pass that on, because our future generation really needs to be able to continue to be involved. We have so many young people who went into politics for the very reason, because change need to happen, and it's amazing what's happening. And so I feel the same can happen when it comes to the legal system as well.
Absolutely. So I know we're going to run out of time here, and I really appreciate you taking time, Judge Morris, to be with us and to answer these questions. This has been fascinating. Absolutely. So, real quick, and I know this is kind of, simplistic, but a lot of people get mixed up when you start talking about a district judge, and, sitting judge like yourself. Contrast for us and just tell us the difference.
Well, we used to have they used to call him the justice of the peace.
Yes, absolutely.
So that was your community judge. That was the judge who settled the small claims matters in your community. And that's what our magistrate system is.
Okay.
That's our local judge who handles, small claims matters within the city. They do preliminary hearings on matters that wind up in the common pleas court. They do small civil cases. They do traffic offenses.
Okay.
They do landlord-tenant. They do truancy cases. All those types of things that are the direct impact on the community. And that's why when all politics is local, people say that all the time. But when we're not paying attention to the people that are doing those things that affect us immediately,
that's right.
Which is your magistrate judge first, and then your common pleas judge next. If you're not, paying attention to those folks and who's getting elected to those offices, your city council people, your school board members, all those races are what have the most direct impact on you immediately. Everyone comes out when there's a presidential election. We have lines around the block.
Absolutely.
But I've sat through many off presidential elections where you're lucky if you get a handful of people to come out and vote. And those are the races that really impact people's lives. So if I could say any one thing as a closing to this is, we got to start minding the things that matter.
That's right. Absolutely.
And if we start minding the things that matter, then we can make our communities better. And those things are just getting engaged and being active in the things that really matter.
Yeah.
Everybody, the big headlines always get the notice, and the big days always carry. But these small days, these small things that we can do to make our communities better, a lot of times people just neglect them and forget about them, and then they wonder why the community doesn't improve and doesn't thrive. So mind the things that matter.
I love it. That's a great way to end this program. And by the way, our youth matters. And when they get caught up in the system period of time, and so we got to be real careful. And it's not what I say, each one reach one, each one teach one. And so we have to, make sure that we're taking care of our young folks. We're listening to them, giving them voice, and hearing them out before they have to be heard by the judge here. Because it gets a little sticky then, okay? But then too many of them are going in front of the judge totally unprepared, and that's just wrong. By the way, we do have some wonderful programs here in Dauphin County, programs through Life Esteem Incorporated, I can mention, but you also have programs through Loop, Breaking the Change, just so many other great programs out there. I'm not going to try to name them all, but Judge Morris has been a great friend to Life Esteem, and we're just beginning to start up our Celebrating Families program, which is a 16-week program. Excellent. We're also doing Strengthening Families, That's a 14-week program. Once again, excellent. These are what you call national evidence-based programs. And then finally, we have the Strong African American program, which is one of the strongest programs. It's just so well put together. Comes out of Atlanta, Georgia, I think the University of Georgia, something like that. Anyhow, and it's only a 7-week program, but it's fantastic. It has tremendous impact. All these programs are free to families. And you don't have to be in trouble to come to these programs. They're open to all families. And we start off with a full meal. We then break down into age appropriate, groups. And our curriculum is based on that, age appropriateness. And then we come back and we share a little bit of what we've learned. And those persons who, make it fully through always, sing the praises of the program and feel like they've gotten a lot out of it. And they also become real good ambassadors for the program. So I just want to mention that those programs are here. If you're interested in your family or you want to refer a family, you can call my wife, Patricia Gadsden, at 717-608-2302. And you can also reach her an email at P for Pat Gadsden, Gadsden, at AOL.com. or Comcast.net. That's P. Gadsden at AOL.com or Comcast.net. Dr. Miller, I never want to leave the program without giving you an opportunity to tell us how you can be reached and do all the fantastic work that you do. So how can people reach you?
Yeah, so you're welcome to visit my website, mylivingsanctuary.org. You can email me at dr.myra@mylivingsanctuary.org. And you can also feel free to reach out and give me a call at 805-380-3733. I'd love to hear from you and see how I can be of help.
Highly recommend you reach out to her. She's a fantastic therapist. That PhD means something, brothers and sisters. She knows what she's talking about. And by the way, I don't know if you want to give out any, I know people may want to have you come in and speak, or they just want to talk with you. I don't know how that works. But
reach at the courthouse.
Reach at the courthouse.
I just wanted to say I rely on your programs when I have families in conflict, and I'm glad that you're out there for the community to have these programs that can help some of these families that can't afford the expensive parenting coordinators and other things that the court sometimes has to put in place. And your program is a great opportunity for us to give some of those same types of services to these families that need them when they're in crisis.
And thank you so much for saying that. And thank you so much for being such a, supporter and a partner in this effort to make families better. And, I also want to take hats off. Years ago, Judge Neen Turgeon always stepped up to the plate. And now you've kind of, taken on that role and really doing a tremendous job for us because it's really about community, And these programs are free and they're funded through Dauphin County Drug and Alcohol, and they're well supported. So thank you to everybody that has the hand in the mix to do what they do. And the last word tonight comes from the man himself, that is Pastor Chris Thomas. And Brother Chris, I know you have space on the planet here for people coming to shows like this. So tell us all about how they can, reach out to you.
So again, if you're interested in broadcasting or programming here at the Voice 17104, you can always reach out to us on the World Wide Web. Again, the voice17104.com. Also by email, the voice17104@gmail.com. You can always stop by our residence here at 509 Division Street. Again, we're uptown Harrisburg, or by phone in conclusion at 717-889-7181.
I don't know where you get that smooth resident. Again, Judge Morris, thank you so much. Pleasure, sir. Absolutely. And maybe we'll have you back on in the future. Whenever you want to come on, just let us know. And Dr. Miller, I'll be talking to you next week. Next week's topic is all around forgiveness. We had a display at the court this past week. A young man got up and hugged a police officer who had, shot and killed his brother. And displayed tremendous, forgiveness there. And it sparked a lot of debate. And even the judge got up and hugged her and broke out in tears and everything. And of course, we know what happened in, South Carolina a couple years back when Dylan Roof went into a church and killed folks. And the family stepped up, some of them, and said, hey, we forgive you. So it's a big topic. It creates a lot of discussion. That will be our topic next week here on the Voice 17104.com. And we hope that you'll tune in next Thursday for the Nate Gadsden Show with my host, Dr. Myra Miller, all the way from, where's that again?
The Ojai Valley in sunny California.
You understand, Dr. Miller. Have a great one, okay?
You
Thanks,
too.
Dr.
Y'all
Miller.
go.